Hi, everybody, and welcome to Backstage. Thanks again for joining us. Thanks to all the loyalists, come every time. And for the newbies, thank you. You will soon become a loyalist. Um, we all have great friends. And a few months ago, this gentleman sent me his book, said, "Tell me what you think." And I said, "You knocked it out of the park, my friend." And now Scott is the hottest name on the circuit. Everybody is eager to hear his good words, and he has been so kind into joining us today. So, Scott Edgar, what is going on in Chicago, Illinois?
Ah, Dr. Tim, thank you so much. I mean, what's really interesting about this is full circle. I mean, so many of the things that we were talking about now, the germ, the seed came from when I was a high school student and when I was a band director and seeing you at the RCA Dome and the inspiration that you've given so many. And, since then, things have just exploded in our world, quite literally, that now the challenges that are facing us, it makes teaching music harder than it's ever been. And, I think back to the time when, I started to think about this, a middle school and a high school band director in Dayton, Ohio, where I knew that my students needed help. They needed things to get them to a place where they can learn music and be taught music effectively. And I knew I needed to do something, but I knew that I wasn't going to go back and be a counselor. I knew that I wasn't going to tackle things from that perspective. I needed to do things as a music teacher. So entered, how do I make all of these pieces come together so that I can be a music teacher to help my students musically, but also help them socially, help them emotionally. And, I thank you so much for your kind words. When you say, the hottest ticket, I think that the hottest ticket is that we need tools. We need skills. We need the ability to fight through the challenges we're facing. And, I was just there at the right place at the right time and thinking about how can we help our music teachers through social and emotional learning give us some of those capacities.
Scott, I mean, this is, again, the coordination or the serendipity or whatever that this hit right when the pandemic hit is really a win-win if you want to get right down to it, I think. What prompted you to head this direction besides just, I want to set the compass a different way?
What's interesting is that the compass started moving 26 years ago. SEL was first introduced 26 years ago, and it took a pandemic for us to really pay attention. And for those of us who have been in education for a while, we know that we live in the world of extremes. That we either go so far in this direction of, rigor and standardization, or we go into character education and we go, we have to meet the students' needs. As my dear friend and your dear friend Scott Rush says, we're in the music business and we're in the people business. It doesn't work if you don't do the other. So that was where I started to explore options. So knowing that, yes, both my parents are counselors, both my parents are social workers. So you say, where did this start? Well, it started at the dinner table when I was 7 years old and they would come home from work and we would prioritize mental health and we would prioritize being a complete human being. And then it slapped me in the face when I was a teacher trying to figure out, well, how do I get my students to this place? And then I sold my soul to higher education and went and explored a PhD, a doctorate, to try to discover what this looks like. And I discovered a construct. But at that point, the construct wasn't being translated for music. So it sounded like something that was complementary. But in my shoes as a music teacher, I'm like, well, kind of makes sense, but not a lot. Let's explore that. Let's go deep. Let's figure out how to translate this so it's never music, 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 stop, SEL, music, 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 music. Tim, one of the biggest questions that I get asked is, how many minutes do I need to spend on
Uh,
SEL? And I look back at them and as honestly as I can, I say, all of them. Because if we are doing it well and we're embedding it and we're integrating it and we're capitalizing on the beauty of nature, the power of music, then how we do this in our world, well, it's taking what we already do and take it to the next level so that we're building these capacities, helping our students to confront the tests of life in a way that we're using music as the portal.
um, yes, I mean, it's not oil and water. right. It is. Uh, was there ever a time in your life, Scott, when you were teaching that um, your emphasis may not have been this?
Oh, 100%. I'm exactly where everybody else was. I mean, I knew that there were challenges. I knew that there were spaces where my students wanted things that I was not hitting the home run, that I wasn't meeting their needs, that I was teaching notes and rhythms above humanity, and that sometimes that sacrificed mental, physical, not physical, mental and social well-being above the at the sacrifice of the musical product. And then that's when I realized, well, my priorities probably aren't straight. And where I discovered this was when, I was in Dayton, Ohio, taught at Carroll High School, and I had students who were wearing the weight of the world on their shoulders. That's the face that we all see, that we know. And then we come in and we still say, okay, trigger that D. Okay, I want you to get that D flat. Okay, F sharp. And they're just not in that space. And we keep fighting that. We keep saying F sharp, F sharp, F sharp. And we think, why aren't they getting it? And we think that it's a musical challenge. Well, it's not a musical challenge. It's everything else that is conflating their ability to be as musical as we want them to be, and to truly embrace that musicianship that we want a human to do, not, a machine. I can teach anyone to put middle finger down for F sharp. It takes more to be a musician. And that's what we're starting to explore. Can we embrace our challenges? Can we recognize our strengths? Can we have students set their own goals instead of the goals that we dictate for them? Can we have our students self-assess so that they are becoming more self-aware about their strengths and their needs? So that everything that's happening in their life, we're not leaving things at the door. We're bringing them into our space. We're embracing them. We're allowing that to funnel into their musicianship and inform their musicianship so that they truly become lifelong musicians. And the skills that we're teaching through our music ed classrooms will come with them after they leave us.
What was the transition like for you when you went, whoa, I'm going to turn a little bit this direction? What happened for you?
Well, I'd be lying to you. I still have days when it's come on, let's go, get that run, get into the practice room, figure it out. So to say that there's a page turn is probably too generous. And we see all the memes on social media where they say, this is me at the beginning of a concert cycle. And this is me the week before the concert. And, I think that a lot of it comes down to the pressures of performance that we put on ourselves, that we put on our students, and to understand that as we're going for that musical excellence, well, some things tend to be sacrificed. Some things tend to, whether intentionally or unintentionally. So the process of the change to really start to focus me on this, it actually necessitated me taking a little bit of a break. So, I was teaching K-12, and then I went to Michigan, and I had 3 years to really devote to thinking, to understand, to reprioritizing. And I did something fun during those 3 years. Those 3 years, I was an itinerant, part-time, fifth-grade band director, just helping out somebody else. And it was some of the most joyous teaching that I ever had. I didn't have pressure for a performance. I had 6 a.m. percussion classes for the beginners, and that was as stressful as it got. And it allowed me a space to have perspective. It allowed me a space to realize that these students are here because they want to learn something at 6 in the morning, because they love music, because they love playing their drum. They love playing their bell kit. And that perspective, it hit me like a ton of bricks. And it was just necessitating that there needed to be some shift in my perspective. And how can I translate the beauty that I was seeing with fifth graders at 6 in the morning to other forms of musicianship, especially when the undergrads that I'm working with, they were the top level musicians, and I saw the stress that they were putting on themselves. So how can we fold that deck? That we don't lose musical excellence, but we fold the deck to have a socially, emotionally, and mentally healthy environment to do so.
Scott, how did it change you and the way you were outside of teaching?
Yeah, outside of teaching, I think this is a lifelong, perspective. I'm trying to gain this every single day. And there are days, ask my wife, that I need to focus on social and emotional learning and that I need to continue my growth. I think the one thing that it did is it made me more comfortable to be vulnerable in all
Right.
capacities of my life.
Right.
That I ceased to be the person who had to have all the answers, but I
Mm.
could be the person to say, I don't have all the answers. What do you have? And in my classroom, it gave me a space to say, you know, I'm out. I thought I knew how to fix this, but guess what? We're as music teachers, we're fixers, but you can't fix human beings. You can provide perspective on how to change a note, how to change a rhythm, how to provide a phrase. Sure, we can do that, but you can't fix human beings. So we need to take our role of fixer out of the equation and be more
Mm.
of a facilitator. And I think that I've tried to infuse that into my role as a human being, how I interact with my colleagues, how I interact with my family. And sometimes I win, sometimes I lose. Sometimes I realize through that vulnerability that I'm on a journey too. And I think right now, especially the world that we're living in, Tim, that we need to realize that we're all on a journey, that we all have blind spots, that we all have biases. And if we're going to encourage our students to come to grips that they are on a journey and encourage them to have social and emotional growth, well, we need to start off by understanding that we are not perfect, that we have inherent biases, that we have blind spots that we need to come to grips with before we can move forward.
What was the shift in the behavior of the students towards you or their communication with you, et cetera, et cetera?
Well, I think that I always tried to facilitate a safe space where belonging happened. In music education, vulnerability is mandated. You can't hide in our classrooms. You have to put yourself out there. Otherwise, everyone's going to know it. So I think that when we started to embrace this idea of vulnerability, that I'm not perfect, that we're engaging in more of a dialogue around what we're trying to accomplish, I think the students saw me taking a step back. And there were a couple times that the students said, "You're the teacher, you tell me." And
Mm.
that wasn't because of what we were trying. It was because after so many years, that's what they expected. They expected that out of the classroom. So, I hate the word training. We train dogs. We don't train kids. We don't train teachers. But we had trained them. We had trained them to expect that I'm the sage on stage. I have all the answers. I'm going to tell you exactly what to do. You're going to acquiesce. And in the end, we're going to have a musical product. So when I started to pull back, there was like, ooh, this is different.
Mm.
This is different. This isn't what I expected. This isn't what I'm used to. So it took a shift. It took some time and it took some conversations. And, it took framing this in a way that, well, I really am authentically curious about how you think we should phrase this. I'm really authentically curious about thinking about what music you want us to play. I'm authentically curious and wanting to know what you want our goals to be. And I don't want to be the person who's putting this forward. I want this to be collaborative so we can co-learn together and I can learn from you just as much as you can learn from me. And it's a process. And eventually the students, right now, a lot of my experimentation, because not hiding this for a second, when I was at Carroll High School, did I even know what SEL was? Absolutely not. I just had this guess that the students had a need that I wasn't fulfilling. But at the college, 100%. We talk about this one step, and the challenges, they come from so many different backgrounds, from so many different models, from so many different teachers, and that for me to kind of just say, well, I'm facilitating, I'm not directing. I would love for us to rename, instead of band directors, band facilitators. I think that would really just reframe what we're doing in our classroom so that it can be a space where, yes, the facilitator needs to guide. We don't disappear, but we're there more in a support capacity where we're organizing things. We're organizing dialogue that's setting the stage for quality musicianship. So in the end, I think the students now expect to have their voice heard because they know that their voice has agency, that if they say they want something, that it's going to affect change. And I think that's one of the most important tools that we can give our students, the space where their voice can make a difference.
Well, this is great. Obviously, and through your soft pitch there, I'll hear people will say, well, I tried that SEL thing one day and it didn't work. Well, one day, are you kidding? And it takes time. It's a shift in the way everything happens, communication, everything. Yeah.
100%, 110%. A lot of times when people come and they say, I tried the SEL thing, the students balked. Two things usually happen. One, the first time you try anything, it doesn't work.
Yeah.
We need to practice it as teachers, as facilitators. This isn't how many of us were taught. And we know that in our profession, we teach how we were taught. You can spend 4 years in any college or university across the country learning how to be a music teacher, but you go back to the modality that you had for K through 12. That's what you had more experience in. Those were your formative years. So as we start to think about that, that wasn't our model. So you're trying something new. You're putting your students into a position that they're not used to being put through. And all of that together just says we should fail the first time. And then we learn what worked and what didn't work. And then we laugh about it and we say, okay, well, what did we like about that? What didn't we like about that? The other piece is so many, and this is the gift we have in the music classroom, Tim, so many districts and states and even our national organizations are saying SEL is important. But here's what we're missing. Social and emotional learning needs to be embedded into content because we don't see the relevance if it is put into an advisory, put into homeroom, put separate from our curricular content. So when we're talking about what this looks like, we have a gift. We have the gift of that power of music. So another piece to this is, especially if the students are getting SEL and there's a stigma around SEL and we're going into it with this idea of, so how are you feeling? Well, that's not going to work. That is not going to work. Okay. The challenge that we have then is how do we just call it great music teaching? When I walk into a SEL rich classroom, and they say, Scott, what does it look like? It looks like great teaching. It looks like great music teaching where the students are involved and there's engagement and there's excitement and the students are questioning and growing and learning. I think one of the scariest things that I ever see is when I go into a classroom and it's quiet. That tells me that there's one brain working when it's a quiet classroom. When I go into a classroom and there's organized chaos, I get excited. I love organized chaos.
I just, the whole idea of that student feeling safe to, treads out on that thin ice and being supported for it. And I see people go, well, I'll just add a lot of that SEL stuff, like some salt, and then it'll taste different. But it's changing per second, right? With the person. Yes?
100%. And it grows and it builds. So, people say, what's the first step? What's the first step in SEL? So that, I just want a little paprika on the deviled egg. Okay. So what does the paprika look like? Student reflection. We take the same food that we're doing. Music is the noun. We build upon that noun. And then student reflection is the piece that we add to that. So let's say we're teaching the littles. Thumbs up, thumbs middle, thumbs down. In an average class, 1 hour class, I'll do 50 fist to 5 reflections. How well did that rep go? How focused are you right now? How clean was that rhythm? So it doesn't need to be a stop the presses event that is going to really transform the students. We're giving students opportunities to have self-reflection throughout our musical process. Then we build from there. So let's say, okay, so that we put the paprika on there. Well, the devil's egg was great, but now I want scrambled eggs. Well, the scrambled eggs are going to look like a little bit more of an entree. We might have a moment where the students are able to give us a little bit more of a mission statement or an advocacy statement about the power of music education, about why they love being in your music class. Might be something where we engage our students in a discussion about the music that they're interested in learning outside of the classroom, whether it be, right now modern band is just such a huge thing, not because inherently the drum, the bass, or the guitar are more powerful, but because it is resonating with the students more outside of the classroom. It provides a space that is more familiar to teach music through. So we start to get started with those conversations and figure out what that looks like. And from there, at the simplest, Tim, when we talk about SEL, we're talking about identity, belonging, and agency. Who is the kiddo? What does that look like? And how does that inform their beliefs and their decisions? belonging? Can we have a safe space where
Hmm.
the students are free to take risks? And then agency, can their voice really affect change? So that's also the continuum that teachers are working on to implement this little bit of identity. How much did you practice and how much did that really affect the final product? Get the students to become aware of that their actions have effect and get them to reflect upon their strengths, their needs, and things like that.
Some people do this innately. They're not even labeling it. It's just a trust relationship is built, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So, I think part of it is personality. I think part of it is the what I would call the disposition to want to build the human through the music classroom. But, it's just like, when you put Carmen Dragon's America the Beautiful in front of your students, and it's in G flat, right? So you get G flat there, and just because you want to do G flat doesn't mean that there aren't building blocks to get there. And if you're not sustained in your G flatting, it's a verb now, and if you're not sustained in your G flatting, well, that piece isn't going to come together. The same thing is true with SEL. It's a skill. It is a innate human skill. Think about any relationship in your life. If you spend time and you practice that relationship, it gets better.
Mhm.
If you ignore that relationship,
Mhm.
it gets worse.
Mhm.
The same that is just infused through all of SEL. So, our mantra right now is the music classroom doesn't do this on its own. It's not, the music classroom isn't magical. What the music classroom does is it provides the perfect space to practice these skills. And that's what makes us unique. So when we approach it from that mindset and we do a social and emotionally conscious classroom that is embedded into the music, so it doesn't feel like one more thing. It's intentional, where we are accomplishing musical goals and SEL goals, and it's sustained so that G flat becomes habit by the time we get to America the Beautiful. Then we're good to go, and then we're seeing really, really profound gains.
Yeah, we're not painting by numbers.
Nope, because humans aren't that simple.
Yeah,
We certainly don't all have the same lines to paint within, or
exactly.
the same color palette. We are all unique human beings, and when we embrace the humanity of the diversity in front of us, that's when we're able to say, what are the broad brushes that we can paint with, so that we are skill building a diverse group of students.
Yeah. Well, I want to stay in this part of the farm forever. However, just so all of our listeners can get a glimpse of maybe some vegetables and a little dessert over here and so forth, I'm going to throw some words at you. Okay, you just react to them. Here we
Sure.
go. Communication,
Necessary and hard.
all the time. You practice it?
Me?
Yeah.
You know, ask my wife that question, and I think she would say, "Ah!" Being on recording here, sure, I practice it all the time. The answer with communication is it is fundamental. And there are so many levels of communication that we need to explore, whether it be the nonverbal. I think oftentimes we think of communication as words, and
Yes.
that is problematic. That so I can say something that my face contradicts.
Yeah.
And if this doesn't develop a sense of self-awareness along with my words, well, self-management is only going to take me so far. That pause button is only going to take me so far. So understanding. So to me, when I talk about communication, there are two things that I'd want for us to consider. One
Mhm.
is empathy, understanding how our communication is being perceived and received. And two, understanding that when I inevitably say something wrong, that it's okay for me to say, I'm sorry. That did not come across. I'm on a growth journey. That's not how I still believe. I think so many people, especially given the intense situations that we're seeing in our country surrounding race, many people are discovering what's in their hearts and communicating in ways that are different and questioning how they communicate around challenging situations, and just saying, you know what? I don't have the right words. I want to learn, though. I want to learn the right words.
Yeah. Communication isn't what we say, it's what they get.
100%.
Yeah,
Doesn't matter what our intent is if it's not
exactly.
received as such.
Exactly. Okay, here's another one for you, buddy. Gratitude.
That's a tough one. That's a tough one. Because gratitude to me is probably one of the most important dispositions that oftentimes as teachers we forget to say thank you. You know, let's take an average rehearsal, and we're going through the process, and we highlight an error, which sometimes the students feel is personal or a personal attack, and then they fix it. They do great work, but we don't say thank you. We don't even acknowledge that it's been fixed. We've gone on to the next error. And so gratitude in our lives, an attitude of gratitude, an attitude of service, an attitude of selflessness is central to putting us in that space I was talking about earlier, where we don't have to be the only one with the answer. When a student comes and offers something to us, sometimes we take it personally. It's like, well, I'm the teacher. I'm the one who comes up with the solutions. No, thank you. That was great. Here we go.
Leadership.
Leadership. Obviously, you for decades have been someone who, I've looked up to in terms of leadership, and your words have guided us into so many profound directions. I think for me, and this is absolutely in line with everything that you say, that everybody can be a leader, and that it is a growth to reach leadership, and that kindergartners can be put into positions that are more than line leaders, and that it spawns from this idea that the best leaders are the best followers, and that if we put some of our attention into getting our students to reflect when they are following, that they can be empathetic followers, that they can be supportive followers to those who are leaders, whether it be student leaders, whether it be us in an instructional capacity, and that as we're doing that, those leaders, the followers, are going to learn what arrows they want to put in their leadership quiver so that they're able to build their capacity while being in the safe space of a follower. And then when they're put into the limelight, when they're put out there on stage, they have more of that capacity ready to go.
This is a personal thing. Well, I guess everything's personal. I don't think you can't not lead.
Please, yeah.
That makes sense?
100%. I think that right now, that when we see people who, and you said this so well, leadership's not a title, it's an attitude, that when we see people who we are perceiving as not leading, then that is a passive decision to lead in that capacity.
Yes. Yes. Well, I'm not a leader. No, you are leading, and you have followers, by the way.
Right. We see those students, and we see those teachers, we see those administrators, and to me, I think the cleanest definition of a leader is how many people look like that person and sound like that person and act like that person. And the loudest actions and modeling are going to be the people who are going to bring people with them.
Yeah. Scott, I want to spend another hour, but we've already spent a half hour. So when we said personal, what's up for you? What's on your bucket list, to-do list?
I'm so glad you asked this. And, I've been, we were sitting on some big news, Tim, and I if it's okay with you, I'd kind of like to share it. This really is a drum roll, my friend. So, you and I share a really, really powerful and amazing friend in Bob Morrison. And he and I have been working behind the scenes for some really, really cool things that are going to be coming out for social and emotional learning. And within this next month, we're going to be launching the Center for Arts Education and Social and Emotional Learning, entirely dedicated to the practice, the policy, the advocacy, the research, and what that looks like. And it's going to just be a powerful resource for arts teachers everywhere to capitalize on this innate ability for arts education classrooms to teach social and emotional skills.
Well, congratulations. You got to be pretty jazzed about that.
Sometimes you lose sleep because of things that are bugging you, and sometimes you lose sleep because things that are exciting you. And right now, 100%, man, this is just, how do I focus on anything else? Because this is, it's been a decade that I've been playing with translating SEL for the music classroom. And this is the culmination. This is where we're providing a space. And, as common as this would sound, this is about helping teachers. This is about helping students. This is about serving as a central resource for the teacher who says, they want me to do SEL, but how? How do I do it in a way that looks like what I want it to look like? And that's where we're going to be. So stay tuned, folks. Within the next month, you're going to hear some really exciting things coming out.
No grass growing under your feet there, Scott.
We're running.
Or anywhere near your feet, for that matter.
10 feet off the ground.
Last question. What advice do you have in capsule form for all those people out there who are just on the front lines doing a remarkable job?
The front lines look different. The front lines look different these days. And, for me to feel like I'm in any capacity to offer advice, the only thing that I think I can do is provide perspective. That now is not the time to take your group from grade 4 to grade 5 rep. Now is not the time to push our students in a capacity that is 100% musical driven. My mantra right now is needs before notes, that we need to put our students and our personal, social, emotional, mental, physical needs ahead of that musical excellence, which has largely defined us. And the danger of that is that some of us think, well, that's lowering my standards. Well, I would argue that no, it's not lowering standards. It's recreating a standard that is meeting our students' changed needs during these challenging times.
Amen. Yeah, a loud amen. Question, can we get you to come back and do this again someday?
You asked, you're one of 3 people in this world that I can't say no to.
I love you, man. You are the best. We will count on that for all of you that were with us today with Scott. I mean, I know we're walking away with an anthology worth of information and great ideas we can put into action. So thank you, my dearest friend. Thanks to all of you. We'll look forward to seeing you next time on Backstage. In the meantime, let the music begin. Thanks.